I opened my front door and my truck was just gone. Not stolen. Towed by order of the HOA president because it looked too blue-collar for the neighborhood. That's when I knew Karen wasn't just crazy. She was dangerous. All right, here we go. Buckle up. I didn't move to Briarwood Hollow because I gave a damn about manicured lawns or matching mailbox posts. I moved here for one reason. My family. We needed space, quiet, and a place where my wife Rachel could breathe without worrying every month if the plumbing was going to explode or if the neighbors would throw another all-night screaming match next door. We'd done apartments, duplexes, even a rental house with a backyard that sloped into a drainage ditch. I was done with all that. This house, this one here, red brick, 2 stories, slightly crooked shutters I kept meaning to fix, it was our reset button. And I built it into something worth protecting with my own 2 hands. Every nail in that backyard pergola, mine. Every board on the deck, cut by me. The gravel fire pit, hauled in with my truck. That truck, yeah, the one Karen had towed, wasn't just a truck. It was the spine of my business, my daily tool, and honestly, kind of a piece of me at this point. I've had it longer than I've known most of the people on my street. I run my own electrical contracting business. Nothing fancy, but I stay busy. A lot of homes out here were built in the late 90s, early 2000s, and nobody bothered to upgrade the wiring since. Every week it's someone else with lights flickering or breaker boxes that look like they're about to catch fire. I pull in decent work, mostly word of mouth. I'm not the kind of guy who leaves flyers on windshields. I show up on time, I fix the problem, I charge fair, and that's enough. Rachel works from home, she's a CPA, has a little office set up in the front of the house with this enormous monitor that always makes it look like she's plotting stock market coups or hacking into NORAD. She's the real backbone of the family, keeps the bills paid, the fridge full, and somehow manages not to lose it when both kids are melting down at the same time. Our son Tyler's 14 and more into circuit boards and Raspberry Pi projects than actual human interaction. If he could solder his way through high school, he would. Our daughter Haley's 9 and basically a firecracker in a ponytail. She's the one who tells the neighbors when my barbecue tastes better than theirs, which definitely hasn't won me any fans at HOA potlucks. When we moved in, Briarwood Hollow seemed like the right fit. Quiet streets, big yards, no through traffic. It wasn't cheap, but it wasn't overpriced either. Kind of in that sweet spot where the community's new enough to still feel clean, but old enough that the trees aren't all stumpy twigs pretending to be shade. The HOA was there, but not really there, you know what I mean? You'd get the occasional email about pool hours or a reminder to bring your cans in from the curb, but no one was beating down your door over what color mulch you used. At first, I parked my truck in the same spot every day, along the curb right in front of our house. Not blocking anything, not dripping oil, not playing music or starting fights. It just existed. The back always had some tools, ladder, conduit pipe, maybe a cooler wedged behind the cab from lunch. Nothing crazy, but it stood out, I guess, in a neighborhood where most of the vehicles were beige SUVs or shiny leased sedans with dealership plates still on them. I remember Rachel making a joke once, something like, "Your truck's the only thing with real dirt on it in this whole street." And she was right. It was real. I was real. I wasn't playing pretend homeowner like some of these people who moved in just to post Instagram stories from their breakfast nook. I worked for a living, and my truck, well, it worked too. I didn't think that would be a problem. I really didn't. I figured if someone had an issue with it, they'd come talk to me like a neighbor. You know, "Hey Mike, your ladder slid off last week," or "Mind pulling up a few feet, my wife's backing out blind." I'd have listened. I'm not a jerk. But that's not how things work when Karen's involved. Now, I didn't know who she was back then. Not really. I'd seen her, trim, blonde, always in some overpriced athleisure outfit, walking her little dog named Bentley like she was on a parade route, always smiling, always waving, always asking how your kids were, and then reporting you for something 10 minutes later. She wasn't the original HOA president. That guy, Mark, retired and moved to Arizona to be closer to grandkids or get away from people like Karen. I don't know. She stepped in not long after, and at first it seemed like she was just trying to bring some structure. Newsletters started showing up, some flowery language about community values, curb appeal, protecting our investments. You know the type. Every sentence looked like it had been through a Pinterest filter. I still didn't think it had anything to do with me. Hell, I'd painted the shutters the year before. I edged the lawn, cleaned up after my dog, didn't throw parties or have people parking on the grass. I was the boring neighbor. But slowly, almost sneakily, things started shifting. There was suddenly a community image committee, which sounded like something from a dystopian sci-fi flick. but mostly translated to Karen and two of her tennis buddies walking around the neighborhood with clipboards and iced coffees, pointing at bushes and driveways and whispering like they were planning a corporate takedown. Then came the new rules. At first, they were small, stuff like no inflatable holiday decorations after January 15th, or front lights must be warm white, not daylight. Kind of ridiculous, but not world-ending. Most of us laughed, rolled our eyes, and moved on. But Karen wasn't just setting structure, she was testing boundaries, seeing how far she could push before someone pushed back. And I didn't realize it yet, but I was already next on her list. It started with a note. Not a letter, not an official envelope, just a folded sheet of paper shoved under my windshield wiper. At first, I thought it was some kid pulling a prank, or maybe someone backing into the truck and leaving a number, the usual crap. But nope, this was pure HOA weirdness straight from the bowels of Karen's little kingdom. It said, "Dear resident, please be mindful of the types of vehicles parked in public view. Construction-related trucks may affect neighborhood aesthetics and home values. Thank you for your cooperation." No name, no logo, no contact info, just that passive-aggressive tone soaked in suburban perfume. I remember standing there holding it, squinting at it like maybe I was reading it wrong. Construction-related trucks? Mine doesn't even have signage on the side. No logos, no ladder racks, just a bed with a toolbox and a couple conduit scraps, sometimes a cooler if I forgot to bring it in. It's not some diesel-belching monster with crane arms. It's a damn Ford F-250. Yeah, it's a workhorse, but it's cleaner than half the Range Rovers on this street. I looked around like maybe someone was watching. You ever get that weird itch, like you're being stared at through a curtain? Nothing. Just sun and silence and Bentley the dog taking a dump on someone's lawn 3 houses down. I crumpled the note and tossed it in the passenger seat. Figured that'd be the end of it. Probably just Karen fishing, seeing who'd bite. When I mentioned it to Rachel later that night, she didn't even look up from her laptop. "She finally came for you, huh?" I blinked. "Wait, what?" Rachel nodded, still typing. "Karen, that's her signature style, vague notes, makes it seem like it's coming from the community so you can't accuse her directly. Denise across the street got the same kind of thing about her Halloween witch last fall." "And this is normal now?" Rachel looked up, raised an eyebrow. "Define normal." That was the thing about Karen. She didn't roll in with demands and ultimatums. She slid in through the cracks, polite smiles, wording that felt like maybe you were the one overreacting, like you were being unreasonable for thinking this was weird. So I shrugged it off. I parked a little closer to the curb, tidied up the bed, took the cooler out. Figured if it made her feel like queen of the cul-de-sac, fine. I've got bigger things to deal with. Paying clients. Upcoming inspection at the Schiller place. Tyler's school project where he was wiring up a model city using a breadboard and more LEDs than I'd used in a decade of recessed lighting installs. But something about that note gnawed at me. It wasn't what it said. It was how it said it. Like it had been written to everyone, but aimed at me. Like Karen wanted to see if I'd flinch. And the worst part? I think I did. I didn't want to admit it, but I started changing how I parked. Backed in straighter, moved it further up the street on garbage day so it wouldn't block the bins. Started unloading tools faster so nothing looked too worksite from the sidewalk. I didn't even realize I was doing it at first. It just happened. One little adjustment after another, like a frog in a pot. You think it's fine. You think you're making peace. But looking back, that note wasn't a warning, it was a probe. A gentle little poke to see if I'd move. When pushed. And buddy, I moved. A couple weeks after the note, I got the first fine. It came in a crisp white envelope stamped with the little Briarwood Hollow HOA logo, a tree that somehow looked smug, and inside was a notice of violation and monetary penalty. $250, just like that, for unauthorized commercial vehicle parking. That's how they worded it, like I'd parked a backhoe on someone's front lawn. I stood there in the kitchen holding the paper, staring at it like maybe there'd be some kind of joke on the second page. There wasn't. Just a due date, an appeal form, and a nice little paragraph explaining that further violations could lead to additional penalties, lien actions, or towing. Rachel read it over my shoulder and didn't even pretend to be surprised. "I told you she'd come for it." I felt the heat rising in my neck. This is my personal vehicle. She knows that. Then why the hell? Because she can. Thing is, the HOA rules, the ones we got when we moved in, didn't say jack about trucks like mine. There was a clause about no commercial vehicles over 10,000 pounds, and another one about business signage. But that was it. My truck didn't have logos, wasn't oversized, and hell, I wasn't running a business out of the house. I wasn't installing breaker panels in the dining room. So I sent in the appeal, typed it up myself, clear, professional, polite. I attached pictures of the truck from different angles, circled the lack of signage, even quoted their own damn bylaws back at them. I figured I'd be reasonable. I figured someone on that board still had common sense. I got a rejection letter 3 days later. No explanation, no phone number to call, just a checkbox on a form. Appeal denied, violation upheld. And that's when I started noticing the other stuff. First, it was the courtesy notices. Little slips of paper in the mailbox, not fines, just warnings. One for weeds visible in front landscaping, which turned out to be a patch of clover. One for peeling paint on mailbox post. It was a chip the size of a fingernail, and another for improper storage of refuse containers. That one made me laugh, because the trash bins were exactly where they'd been for 5 years. Then the letters stopped being passive-aggressive and just got aggressive. I got a second fine, then a third. The dollar amount started climbing. The wording got more legal. One of them actually used the phrase community compliance escalation procedure, which sounded like something out of a corporate spy movie. It wasn't just about the truck anymore. It was everything. A running list of invented problems, each one more absurd than the last. Rachel kept track of every notice, every letter, every timestamp. She made a folder on her computer and labeled it Karen's War. And yet somehow it kept getting worse. One morning I came out and found a man standing next to my truck. Beige polo, clipboard, HOA badge. He was measuring it, like physically measuring the length of it from bumper to bumper. When I asked what he was doing, he didn't even flinch. Verifying it meets community parking dimensions. You mean the legal parking spot I've used for years? He just scribbled something and walked away, never looked me in the eye. Then came the updated regulations. We got a special email, subject line, Community Image Enhancement Policy Update, that outlined new parking standards passed by a private HOA vote. The rules had changed. Now, any vehicle with visible tools, equipment, or work-related materials in the bed would be classified as non-residential and subject to fines or removal. Oh, and the new rules applied retroactively. As in, now, even if you parked like this before, it was suddenly illegal. I showed the email to Rachel, half laughing. They just rewrote the rules because I wouldn't roll over. She didn't laugh. You know what this is, right? She said. This isn't about rules. This is about her. Karen doesn't want your truck here, so now she's rewriting reality to make it happen. And she was right. It wasn't about HOA standards. It wasn't about protecting property values. It was about me, about Karen needing to prove she could make me comply, make me bend. And when bending didn't work, she brought out the big guns. I was in the crawl space of a client's house, rewiring a sub-panel that looked like it had been assembled by blind raccoons, when my phone buzzed. Missed call from Rachel, then another, then a text that said simply, "They're towing it." I didn't even finish packing up my tools. I bolted out of there like the house was on fire. By the time I got home, the truck was gone. Just gone. Curb empty. Oil stain still there, like a ghost. No note, no paperwork. Just a smug little email waiting in my inbox. Vehicle has been removed per compliance protocol due to repeated nonconformance. Please contact HOA administration for release procedures. I was shaking, not just with anger, but with disbelief. They didn't give me notice. They didn't call. They just took it, like it was their property, like I didn't matter. Rachel was furious. Tyler came down from his room. I don't even know how he knew something was wrong, but he did, and just stood in the doorway, silent, looking at me like he didn't recognize me for a second. Like I wasn't his dad, like I was just someone who'd lost. And maybe I had, because that moment, standing there on my own lawn in front of an empty curb where my truck should have been, that's when I realized something. This wasn't going away. Karen wasn't going to stop. And no amount of logic or civility or neatly worded appeals was going to change that. She'd drawn the line, and she expected me to cross it on my knees. I spent the first few minutes pacing the driveway, trying not to lose it. You know that kind of pacing where your brain's too full to sit still, but you also don't know what the hell you're actually trying to accomplish. That was me, just walking angry circles like maybe, if I moved enough, it'd undo what just happened. I called the number on the email. It rang 6 times before going to voicemail. No name, just that robotic tone. "You've reached the Briarwood Hollow HOA Administration Office. Please leave a detailed message." I didn't bother. Instead, I drove Rachel's Subaru down to the number listed for the towing company. This place was in some industrial zone on the other side of town, all rusted fences and broken pavement and a front office with plastic chairs and a vending machine that hadn't worked since the Clinton administration. The guy behind the desk didn't even look up when I walked in. Name? Mike Easton. My truck was towed. Ford F-250. He tapped on his keyboard with one finger, slowly, like he was doing it on purpose. Briarwood Hollow? I nodded. He slid a clipboard across the counter. HOA release form signed by an authorized party. Once we get that, you can pay and pick it up. $275 a day after today. I blinked. Wait, I own that truck. It wasn't abandoned. I didn't park in a fire lane. They can't just... He cut me off with a look. Not mean, not even unfriendly. Just tired. Buddy, you think you're the first one from that neighborhood to show up here? He turned the screen around. There were 7 other vehicles on the list, all from my neighborhood, different addresses, same HOA. I didn't know what to say. I just stared at the list. He sighed and leaned in like he was giving me a gift. Call your HOA, get the release, pay the fee, or they keep billing. So I did what any halfway sane person would do. I tried to go through the proper channels. I emailed the HOA again. No answer. Left voicemails? Nothing. I even tried to go to the admin office mentioned in the bylaws, which turned out to be a glorified P.O. box at a UPS store near the mall. Rachel helped me file a formal complaint with the County Housing Authority. We sent them every document, every picture, every note, and a week later I got a generic email saying, Briarwood Hollow. HOA is a private organization with autonomy over community policy. Please consult your HOA board for resolution. So basically, not our problem. I called a lawyer next. The guy was sharp, local, had his face on one of those freeway billboards that said "Fighting for You" in big, bold letters. I met him in person and laid it all out. The truck, the fines, the tows, the changing rules, everything. He listened, took notes, then leaned back in his chair and said, I'll be honest with you, Mike, you're not wrong, but this isn't about right or wrong. This is about leverage. HOA boards are notorious for this kind of crap. They write their own playbook, and unless they violate something clearly illegal, no one wants to touch it. So what do I do? Well, we could fight it, but you're looking at months, possibly years, and you're going to bleed money doing it. Best case, you win in court and they're told to leave you alone. Worst case, you spend 10 grand just to be told to work it out amicably. Rachel asked the obvious question. How much just to get it started? He didn't even blink. $3,000 retainer. We left without signing anything. That night, we sat in the kitchen with a bottle of wine neither of us really wanted, both of us just staring at the table. I had that manila folder out again, the one Rachel labeled Karen's War. It was thick now, over an inch. Notes, printouts, screenshots, dates, violations. And still, none of it had made a dent. I tried to talk to a few neighbors, too. I went over to Kevin's place. Guy next door, IT guy, keeps to himself. He opened the door halfway, looked around like he was expecting someone to be watching. Hey, I said, you ever had trouble with the HOA? He gave me a long, blank stare, then said, depends on what you mean by trouble. I told him about the truck, the fines, the tow. His face didn't change, but he nodded, slow and careful. They warned me about my solar panels, said the angle was aesthetic disruption. I adjusted them anyway, but yeah, Karen's relentless. So you've seen this before? He gave a tiny laugh. I've lived it, man. You're not the first. You're just the first to push back this hard. I tried Glenda next. The older lady 2 houses down always wore house slippers even when she got the mail. She'd always seemed sweet, polite, maybe a little nosy, but never hostile. When I brought up the HOA, she looked over her shoulder like we were talking about Voldemort. She told me to move my bird feeder, said it encouraged squirrels. Did you? No, she said, but I covered it. That's when it hit me. Everyone knew. Everyone had a story. A fine, a warning, a note, but no one talked about it. Not out loud. Karen had somehow turned the whole neighborhood into this quiet little battleground where everyone just kept their heads down and hoped the shrapnel landed somewhere else. I even tried writing directly to the board, not Karen, the others. There were 5 of them, listed by name in the HOA welcome packet we got years ago. I found their emails, sent individual messages explaining everything, with attachments and screenshots. Only one responded, a guy named Alan. His reply was 6 words. I'm sorry, I can't get involved. No punctuation, nothing else. At some point in all of this, Rachel looked at me and said something that stuck with me. You know the worst part? You're trying to fix this like a normal person, like there's a system that cares. But this is the system, and Karen built it for herself. And she was right. Every road I took led back to Karen. Every phone call, every form, every email, All of it hit a dead end with her signature at the bottom. The law wasn't helping. The board wasn't helping. The neighbors were too scared, and the longer it dragged on, the more I felt it chipping away at something I couldn't quite name. I was still showing up to jobs, still doing the work, but my head wasn't in it. I was distracted, angry, short-tempered. Rachel started handling more of the business calls because I couldn't keep the edge out of my voice anymore. Tyler wouldn't talk to me much. Haley kept asking when I'd get my truck back, and I didn't have an answer. I started waking up in the middle of the night, not from dreams, just this tight, clenched feeling in my chest, like something was pushing down on me, like I was losing control of my life inch by inch. And the worst part? Karen wasn't even pretending anymore. She started walking Bentley right past our house, slow and smug, giving these tight little waves if we were outside. One time, I was on the porch drinking coffee, and she smiled at me, big, bright, too white, and said, "Looks like things are finally getting cleaned up over here." I didn't say anything. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because in that moment I knew if I opened my mouth, I wasn't going to be civil anymore, and I wasn't ready to go to war. Not yet. It happened because of a dog. Not Bentley, thank God, not that rat with a bow tie, but Glenda's old golden retriever, Murphy. Sweet dog. Limped a little, always barked once when he saw me like he was saying hi and then remembered he was retired. That dog accidentally cracked open everything. See, Glenda knocked on my door, holding a scratched-up leash and looking like she'd just aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Murphy had gotten loose, and she was in a full panic. I jumped in the Subaru, circled the block twice, and found him over by the retention pond, sniffing at something like it owed him money. I got him in the car, took him back, and she practically collapsed into my front lawn, thanking me. That's when she invited me in for tea, which is not something I usually go for, but I don't know, she looked like she needed someone to talk to. Inside, the place smelled like cedar and lemon polish. Her walls were covered with pictures, kids, grandkids, someone in a military uniform. I followed her into the kitchen, and while she boiled water, she said the thing that would flip this entire nightmare upside down. She said, "I've been wanting to tell someone what she did." I didn't even have to ask who she was. Glenda sat down across from me, hands curled around a chipped mug, and told me about an HOA meeting from 2 years back. Apparently, Karen had tried to push through a policy banning non-native landscaping elements, which was just a fancy way of saying no lawn gnomes, pink flamingos, or those solar lights people stick in flower beds. The meeting had been a disaster. People were upset. Voices were raised. There was supposed to be a vote. But then Karen said something like, "We'll circle back to this in a special session," and that was that. Except a week later, Glenda got the monthly bulletin, and surprise, the policy had passed. Just like that. No vote. No minutes, just her word. "You still have that bulletin?" I asked, my heart suddenly hammering in my throat. She nodded, got up, came back with a little file box and started digging. That's when I saw it, a thick packet, the kind you get in the mail from the HOA when they want to act like they're a Fortune 500 company. She handed it to me like she was passing a grenade. Inside was the bulletin, glossy 2-column layout, lots of clip art and pastel banners. But near the bottom, under Community Decisions and Updates, was the line, "The board has approved the landscaping uniformity clause as of last month's HOA meeting. Details available upon request." No signatures, no minutes, no record of the vote, just a tidy little statement like it was gospel. I stared at it for a long time, then flipped it over. Glenda had written something in pencil on the back. No vote happened. I was there. This isn't what we agreed to. Karen lied. "Why didn't you say anything back then?" I asked gently. Glenda looked down at her tea. Because she started coming after me. Notices. Warnings. Suddenly my rose trellis was a safety hazard. She fined me for Murphy's barking even though he only barks when Bentley shows up. I got scared, Mike, and I figured maybe if I just stayed quiet, she'd forget about me. I leaned back in my chair, mind racing. This wasn't just some HOA nonsense anymore. This was fraud. She rewrote policy and claimed it was passed. And if she did it once, what else did she fake? I called Rachel the second I got home, told her everything. She sat down at her laptop, cracked her knuckles like she was about to go full courtroom drama on someone and said, "Send me scans of that bulletin, now." I did. She compared it to the official HOA bylaws we downloaded back when this all started. The landscaping clause was in there, but get this, the date it was supposedly passed? Exactly 1 day before that HOA meeting Glenda said they never voted at. Backdated. That's when Rachel said something that stopped me cold. If she backdated that, Mike, then she probably backdated yours too. I didn't know what to say, so she said it for me. She changed the rules after the fact. She made it retroactive. You're getting fined and harassed over something that wasn't even against the rules when you did it. I felt something shift in my chest. Not anger this time, not frustration. Hope. It was tiny, fragile, barely there, but it was something. I pulled out my copy of the parking violation, the original one. Rachel dug into the metadata of the HOA documents on their site. She's good at that stuff, like scary good. She compared timestamps, creation dates, edit histories, and there it was. A PDF listed as HOA_parking amendments. Official final period. Created 2 weeks after my truck was towed. The rule didn't exist when they punished me. They invented it afterward to cover themselves. That was the crack in the dam. The moment I realized this wasn't just me getting steamrolled, this was her screwing up, getting too confident, leaving a trail. I still didn't know what I was going to do with it, but for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was playing defense. I had something, and maybe, just maybe, it was enough to turn this whole damn thing around. I didn't sleep that night, not really. You ever get that kind of adrenaline that keeps your eyes open, but your body feels like it's vibrating from the inside out? That was me. I laid in bed staring at the ceiling, going over everything. Every letter, every fine, every smug little email Karen had ever sent. Over and over. It all started to line up like a damn jigsaw puzzle I didn't know I'd been solving. At some point, Rachel rolled over and said, "You're still awake, aren't you?" I just whispered, "We've got her." She didn't even ask who. She just said, "Then it's time to hit back." The next morning, we pulled everything out. Every paper, every screenshot, every HOA newsletter and email and PDF. Rachel was already in work mode, her hair in a bun, coffee cup steaming next to her laptop like she was prepping for war. And in a way, she was. We built a timeline. That's where it started. All the violation letters, dates, all the supposed rule changes, dates, all the evidence of when those PDFs were actually created, dates. Once we laid it all out side by side, the pattern was blinding. Karen wasn't just changing rules, she was rewriting history, and sloppily too. She was leaving digital fingerprints all over everything. We were going to make her choke on it. Rachel had this idea. We'd package it all up like a case file. Clear, clean, undeniable. Not just for lawyers, for neighbors. Because at this point, it wasn't about just the truck anymore. Karen had been running this neighborhood like her own private fiefdom, and we weren't the only people she'd stepped on. I still had Glenda's bulletin with the backdated policy. That was Exhibit A. Then came the parking amendments with their doctored timestamps. Then I remembered something Kevin had said, that Karen once sent out an HOA newsletter with adjusted voting results. I dropped by his place with a six-pack. He let me in and showed me the email he'd saved. I had Rachel forward him a document metadata reader she used for her own work, and we cracked open the file together. Sure enough, it had been edited twice after the date printed on the top. And the original version? Kevin still had it, buried in his downloads folder like an old receipt. 2 versions, same newsletter, different vote counts. "Holy crap," Kevin muttered. "She's been gaslighting the whole neighborhood." He was in. Rachel looped in Ashley Wallace next, the new neighbor, the one who had gone toe-to-toe with Karen once before. She was a real estate attorney, worked for a firm downtown, and knew exactly how HOA boards were supposed to operate. We laid out everything for her. She read through it, slow and quiet, and when she was done, she leaned back and said, "She's cooked. You guys realize that, right?" I didn't say anything. She looked me dead in the eye. "If this goes public, and it should, she's done. This isn't just HOA overreach. This is fraud, abuse of process, violation of fiduciary duty. If she's been handling vendor contracts too, we're talking potential criminal stuff." That's when Rachel chimed in. "We don't want to sue. Not yet. We want to build pressure, get the neighborhood behind it, make her sweat." Ashley smiled. Even better. We started laying the groundwork for the plan. Ashley drafted a formal letter of complaint to the state's Department of Consumer Affairs, specifically their HOA Oversight Division. It wasn't just a rant, it was backed with documentation, metadata logs, side-by-side comparisons, sworn statements from Glenda and Kevin, and a legal explanation of every way Karen had broken protocol. Rachel sent that off with delivery confirmation and tracking. Meanwhile, I started talking to neighbors, one by one, not knocking on doors like a politician, more like stopping to chat when I saw them out front, pretending to ask about their gardens or trash day. Then I'd slip in something like, "You ever get fined for that garden gnome?" Or, "Still getting notices about your siding." Every single one of them had a story, some tiny, some ridiculous. One guy, Matt, said he got a letter because his daughter's chalk drawings on the driveway were visual clutter. Another lady had been cited for leaving her Christmas wreath up past the designated winter period. She didn't even know there was a designated winter period. I didn't push, just listened, nodded, planted the seed. Then Rachel built the website. Nothing flashy, just a clean layout, a simple name, briarwoodtruth.com. It had a password-protected archive with everything, scanned letters, photos, video clips, metadata comparisons, and a detailed breakdown of what Karen had been doing. We added the legal complaint too, with a note that said, filed, pending response. Once it was ready, Ashley reviewed it, nodded, and said, now you wait. And we did. For a little while, but we weren't idle. I filed a Freedom of Information request with the city for any HOA communications with local government, vendors, or contractors. Rachel submitted a separate request for HOA meeting minutes for the last 3 years, the ones they conveniently stopped uploading halfway through last year. Kevin offered to dig deeper, too, said he could help pull Karen's company records. Turns out she listed herself as Karen L. DeWitt Consulting on several HOA bids. She'd been advising on landscaping and maintenance contracts. Meaning? She was likely steering business to vendors who paid her under the table, which meant this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about misused funds, undisclosed conflicts of interest, and potentially tax fraud. But even before any of that fully came together, even before the formal accusations, I knew what we were doing. We were building a bomb, not a literal one, a truth bomb, a reality check. And when it dropped, Karen would have nowhere left to hide. I didn't launch the website right away. That was the hardest part, waiting. Every instinct in me wanted to press publish and shove the truth in Karen's face like a hot iron. But Ashley told me to hold. Rachel, too. It's not just about being right, she said. It's about being undeniable. So we double-checked everything. Rachel ran through every timestamp again. Ashley drafted a summary for anyone who wouldn't read the fine print. Kevin stress-tested the site's security. Tyler, bless that kid, even helped us make a little animated explainer for the homepage. It opened with a simple line. What happens when the rules are rigged? Then it hit play and walked people through the lies. And then one sunny, normal-looking afternoon, Rachel and I just did it. We clicked publish, sent the password to 10 people. Just 10. Neighbors we trusted. People who had grumbled quietly for years but never felt like they could speak up. By dinner, 20 more had the password. By the next morning, the website had been shared in the neighborhood Facebook group. Someone posted, "Y'all seen this? Explains a lot about Karen and the HOA mess." Wow. That's when it started. I got a text from Kevin that just said, "Brace yourself." 10 minutes later, the site crashed. Too much traffic. Rachel got it back up in 5, and from there, it was wildfire. I mean, people talked. People posted screenshots. Glenda finally went full grandma vigilante and dropped the newsletter comparison in a group chat with the caption, "Proof she's been lying to us." I figured Karen would retreat. Go quiet, maybe deny it all with some bland statement about miscommunication or clerical oversight. But no, she came out swinging. First, she sent a community integrity bulletin, her words, not mine, accusing unidentified residents of attempting to destabilize the HOA for personal gain. She claimed the website was riddled with falsehoods, that the documents were unverified, and that the board had complete confidence in the current leadership. She even called me out without calling me out. Said some residents had undisclosed business interests in the community and were attempting to undermine aesthetic policies to prioritize personal profit. Yeah, me, because apparently fixing someone's panel box for $200 makes me a threat to suburban democracy. Then she tried to get ahead of it. She called an emergency HOA board meeting, supposedly just for clarifications. But we knew what it really was, damage control, and you bet your ass I showed up. The meeting was held in the Briarwood Community Center, that sad little rec room with folding chairs and an American flag that's always half unraveled. The place was packed, people standing in the back, people sitting on coolers and countertop edges. I hadn't seen that many neighbors in one place since the summer block party 5 years ago, and back then half of them were drunk. Karen was already up front when I walked in. Hair perfect, blazer crisp, smile sharp enough to cut drywall. She looked around the room like a queen entering her court, except this time the court wasn't clapping. She cleared her throat and launched into her usual performance. Talked about external threats, misunderstandings, and out-of-context documents. She spun it like a press secretary on caffeine. Fast, confident, full of phrases like due diligence and we've always acted in good faith. Then she opened the floor. Big mistake, because the first person to speak was Glenda. Sweet, trembling Glenda, wearing a pink cardigan with little embroidered pumpkins, who stood up and said, "Karen, I was at the meeting 2 years ago. You never held that vote. I wrote it down. I remember. You lied." You could hear a pin drop. Then Matt, chalk drawing guy, chimed in, asked why his daughter's art was visual clutter when Karen's driveway had been power washed by an unlicensed vendor. Someone else shouted, "Yeah, and how come your mailbox light is daylight white? That's against the rules, isn't it?" That's when it happened. The shift. For the first time, Karen looked nervous. Not flustered, not angry, nervous, like she realized the room wasn't hers anymore. She tried to hold her ground, said something about selective enforcement and the board's discretion, but the dam had cracked. People were done being polite, done tiptoeing. Ashley stood up next, professional, calm. She introduced herself, not as a lawyer, but as a neighbor. Then she calmly explained how the HOA had violated its own bylaws in at least 7 documented ways, including retroactive amendments, falsified voting records, and contract conflicts of interest. She brought up the state complaint, said it had been filed, confirmed, and that the Oversight Division was very interested in looking further. Karen tried to interrupt. Ashley didn't let her. She kept going, outlined the legal responsibilities of an HOA board, the duty to disclose vendor relationships, the fiduciary obligations to the community. She didn't raise her voice, didn't accuse, she just stated it, and it landed like thunder. Karen started talking faster after that, got defensive, rambling. She mentioned her decades of real estate experience, which no one had asked about, tried to pivot to property values again. That's when Kevin stood up and said, "Hey Karen, didn't your cousin win that landscaping contract last year?" She froze. Rachel passed out printouts of the vendor invoices, highlighted lines, circled dates. The room turned, and Karen knew it. You could see it in her eyes, this flicker of panic behind the smile, like a mask slipping. Then came the final blow. Tyler, my son, who I didn't even know was coming, stood up in the back of the room and said loud and clear, "She changed the file after she posted it. I checked the metadata." Dead silence. Karen opened her mouth to say something, but no sound came out. It was done. She didn't storm out. She didn't scream. She just kind of deflated, sat back in her chair, stared at nothing. That was the moment we took the power back. Not just from her, from the whole machine she'd built around fear, silence, and fake rules. We weren't scared anymore. The plan had worked. And now? Now came the fallout. It happened faster than I thought it would. Like, once the mask slipped, Karen didn't just lose her grip. She went into free fall. 1 minute, she's running the show with her clipboard and her little HOA newsletter banners, and the next, she's trying to figure out why her own board won't return her emails. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised. When someone rules by fear long enough, the second that fear cracks, people scatter, even the ones who used to kiss the ring. That next morning, our front yard looked like election day. Neighbors walking by, waving, nodding, dropping off cookies, literal cookies, like we'd just come back from war. One woman, Melissa, from 2 streets over, handed Rachel a bottle of wine and said, "Thank you for standing up to her. You have no idea." "Oh, I think we do," Rachel said. I got a call later that day from the state's HOA Oversight Division, real person, real voice, real badge number. Said they'd received the complaint, reviewed the documentation, and were opening a preliminary investigation into Briarwood Hollow's HOA governance. Asked if I'd be available to provide a formal statement and copies of the original documents. I told him he could have everything. Hell, I offered to drive it down myself. Then things started unraveling in public. Kevin forwarded me screenshots from the neighborhood Facebook group. Posts were flying. Someone asked if the board had ever held proper elections. Someone else dropped the link to briarwoodtruth.com and said, "I thought this was a conspiracy, but after last night? Nope, I'm all in." The comments were full of people sharing their own stories. Small stuff, weird stuff, and a few that honestly made mine look tame. One guy, a Navy vet, said Karen fined him for flying his American flag from a non-approved bracket. Another woman said her teenage son had been threatened with a noise violation because he played his guitar on the porch. And then, as if the internet gods themselves wanted to put a cherry on top, someone leaked the HOA's vendor spreadsheet. It wasn't me. I still don't know who did it. But there it was, a full list of payments, contracts, and contacts. Right at the top, DeWitt Property Solutions, LLC, listed as consulting for landscape upgrades. Another entry, Bentley and Company. Some made-up entity paid $12,000 for neighborhood beautification strategy. Guess who signed those checks? Karen. And in one case, Karen's own husband as the approving party. It exploded. Ashley was the one who called the local news station. She sent them a folder with a bow on it, full of documents and contact info. The reporter called me within the hour. We filmed the interview right in my backyard under the pergola I'd built myself. I wore my work shirt. Rachel insisted I shave. I didn't say anything dramatic, just told the truth. I didn't want to be the guy who fought his HOA. I just wanted to park my truck where it's always been parked and go to work like everybody else. But you push people far enough, they stop rolling over. The piece aired that evening on the 6 o'clock news. Nothing sensational, no music or gimmicks. Just calm narration, a few shots of the documents, my truck, and that now infamous bulletin Glenda had saved with her pencil notes on the back. They even got a quote from Ashley about systemic abuse of homeowner trust. It ran again at 10. After that, Karen couldn't show her face. She didn't step down right away, not publicly. She sent out a mass email that sounded like it had been written by a lawyer and a bottle of Chardonnay. Talked about taking time to focus on family and appreciating the opportunity to serve. Not a single word about the investigation, not one apology, but everyone knew she was done. A few weeks later, the HOA board held a new election, a real one this time. Printed ballots, open candidates, public count. Ashley ran. Kevin helped set up the tech. Glenda brought muffins. Rachel counted the votes. Karen didn't even show. Ashley won by a landslide. Kevin got voted in as treasurer. A young couple from around the corner, the ones with the twins, took over landscaping decisions. I declined to run for anything. I told them I'd had enough HOA politics to last me a lifetime, but I told Ashley I'd help when needed, just not from the front row. Shortly after the election, the board issued a public retraction of Karen's amendments, every last one of them. The parking rule, gone. The fake landscaping clause, erased. All the fines, voided, mine included. They even reimbursed me for the tow and the storage fees, and with a formal letter saying the HOA deeply regrets the mishandling of community policy enforcement. I kept that letter, by the way, framed it. And the truck? Parked right back where it belonged. Same spot, same oil stain, same dent on the rear bumper from that time I backed into a concrete planter in a Home Depot lot. I even washed it. Not for them, for me. I remember stepping back, looking at it and thinking, you made it, buddy, we both did. Public exposure didn't just end Karen's reign, it peeled the paint off the whole rotten foundation, and once sunlight hit it, people woke up, and they remembered who actually owns this neighborhood. Not a clipboard, not a title, not some little tyrant hiding behind bylaws. United States. Life's quiet again. The kind of quiet I remember from before all this started, when drama meant a dead smoke alarm battery or the kids arguing over the last waffle. The truck's still there, right out front, same spot it's always been. I don't think I'll ever move it, not out of stubbornness anymore, just because it belongs there. Every time I walk past it, I feel this low thrum of pride in my chest. It's not just a vehicle, it's a monument now, to every inch of crap we had to crawl through to be left the hell alone. Sometimes I sit on the porch with a beer and just watch. Watch neighbors walk by, dogs chasing squirrels, kids pedaling in zigzags down the street. You'd never know this place was at war a few months back, and that's how you know we won. Because the quiet came back, and this time it feels earned. Rachel and I laugh more now. Real laughs, not those exhausted, we're losing our minds, chuckles. She still keeps the HOA letters in her laptop folder, says she might write a blog about it someday. I told her she should call it Suburban Combat, How to Win a War Without Leaving Your Lawn Chair. She said that was the dumbest title ever, then wrote it down. Tyler's a different kid lately. I think watching all of it go down, seeing me stand up, seeing himself play a role in the takedown, it did something to him. Gave him this quiet confidence, like now he knows the world's messy and unfair sometimes, but if you dig deep, do the work, and stay true to the facts, you can actually change something. I'd never say it to his face. He's still a teenager, and I'd never hear the end of it. But I think he grew up more in that 1 month than in the past 2 years combined. Haley still tells people her dad beat the neighborhood boss lady, which is horrifying and hilarious. I overheard her explaining it to some kid at the park, and I had to walk away before I cracked up. That girl could run a revolution with a juice box in one hand and a popsicle in the other. We're better now, stronger somehow. Not because we picked a fight, but because we survived one. The neighborhood's better too. Not perfect. I mean, this is still suburbia. Someone's always going to complain about something. But now, people actually talk. There's no more walking on eggshells. We've got real meetings, real votes. And if someone wants to change the paint color rules or revise a bylaw, they have to say it out loud. In front of everyone. Revolutionary, I know. Karen? Last I heard, she moved in with her sister upstate. Rumor is she's trying to join another HOA. I feel sorry for them. Kind of, but not that sorry. Funny thing is, I don't think about her much anymore. I don't need to. She's not part of this place now. She doesn't get to shape what it looks like or how it feels or who parks where. She's a memory, the kind that stings a little but also reminds you why scars matter. The other day, Glenda came by with a pie and sat with me on the porch. She looked out at the street, then leaned in and said, "You know, I never thought I'd see someone stand up to her. I thought we'd all just keep shrinking." I told her I didn't set out to be anyone's hero. I just wanted my damn truck back. She laughed. "And you got your truck, Mike. But you gave the rest of us something too." I don't know about all that. I just know this. The next time someone tells me the rules are written in stone, I'm going to ask to see the chisel. And if they don't like it, well, I've got plenty more driveway.